views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And this will be the first day in 2 weeks that we haven't highlighted Iran, but there is a dispatch there from one of our correspondents in Iran, a first-hand account of what is going on, the individual's feelings about what is going on, and I urge you to read it today. And also I urge you to go there and subscribe to my Twitter feed, twitter.com/Gary Baumgarten. It's a news feed that keeps you up to date on all the breaking international news stories that you need to know about in order to be an informed chatter on Paltalk. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Well, we have an extraordinary two guests with us today. And you're going to find this quite an amazing show, in my opinion. Back in the 1990s, there was a businesswoman who, with her husband, traveled to Russia to take care of some business. She came from a family that had a bit of wealth, and what was believed at the time to be the Russian mob kidnapped her and held her in a cellar and held her hostage for 11 days, during which time unthinkable things were done, including beatings and rapes. It wasn't until later, after she had been freed, years later, that they learned somehow that it was not really the Russian mob behind it. It was al-Qaeda trying to hold her hostage in an attempt to get money to fund their terrorist activities. It's an amazing story of courage, a story that she is telling in person as she travels the globe, a story that is also recounted in this new book called Burned by New York Times bestselling author David Hagberg, right there. For those of you who are watching on Paltalk, there is the book. This is actually a fictional account inspired by true events. David Hagberg and Yvonne Bornstein, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
It's our pleasure to have you here, and I know it's been many years since, but we're glad you're all right. And I'm sure that what happened, the events of those days, Yvonne, live with you now and forever, I am sure. I just can't even imagine how horrific that ordeal must have been. Before we get to David, I'd just like to ask you, Yvonne, if you could tell us what you were doing in Russia at that time, and how you ended up in the grasp of what later turned out to be al-Qaeda operatives.
The brief version of the story, Gary, because it would probably take me 3 weeks to tell you the whole story. My former husband and I were conducting commodity trading business. We were not only one of the first Australian companies to be conducting this type of business, but we were the first to have established 11 joint ventures between our Australian company and various states of what was the Soviet Union at that time. We started dealing probably back in '87 when it was relatively quiet. How did we get into this business? We were introduced to the world of commodity trading after the 1980 Olympic Games, and we knew that the Eastern Bloc was opening up to the Western world in terms of business, so we decided to take a plunge, put some money in, and get into it. later on, there's obviously a lot in between, and the 11 days was horrific, as you have stated, and thank you for that introduction. It was very accurate. But later on, it wasn't until I started researching for my own book, 11 Days of Hell, which I believe has just been released in the United States only about 2-3 weeks ago by New Holland Publishers. When I started researching for my book, I discovered that these people who, yes, I believed, and my former husband believed, to be the Russian mob, turned out to be Chechen rebels with a link to early al-Qaeda operatives. And it wasn't until all these years later that I found this out, which was a great shock to my system, I can tell you.
And why did they choose you? Was it because your family had a degree of wealth?
No. It wasn't a random kidnapping. It was planned, premeditated. We had done a particular business deal with one of our joint venture partners who was based in Vladivostok. Now, this was a fertilizer deal, which was done organised between our Australian company, the Vladivostok joint venture, and the Taiwanese. There was a shipment of fertilizer that was loaded onto a ship in Vladivostok. On its way to Taiwan, it was bagged and in the hull of a ship. On its way to Taiwan, the ship hit a storm, the bags broke open, there was fertilizer all over the bottom of the ship. By the time it got to Taiwan, it was everywhere. Not only did we have to organise and pay for it to be rebagged, but the Taiwanese were furious because they believed that the fertilizer was of inferior quality. And so it began. My former husband and I decided that obviously we wanted to keep on with the business that we had on the table, and at that stage we had about $23 million worth of contracts sitting on the table. We decided to quickly get on a plane and go and resolve this matter. And 10 minutes out of the airport, we were kidnapped, so it was all planned.
And what happened to him? In the book, he was assassinated at the side of the road while you watch in horror.
You mean my husband?
In the book, in the fictionalized account, what happened in real life?
Yes.
That's what happened. They killed him.
Breaking up a little.
They killed him in front of you in actual fact?
No, not in actual fact. That was part of the fictional novel, which I'm sure David will tell you all about. Because, no, he was with me the whole 11 days, and, we were separated a lot of the time, beaten, tortured. As you said, I was raped by one of the guys in this particular house. It was a dacha, which was located about 80 kilometres outside the Russian capital, and